Well, welcome to another session of This Is Me, About Me. Today we're joined by Fay Stephenson, also known as Felicity Finds. So I'm going to jump in very quickly with a question. So who are you and what do you do, Fay?
So as you said, my name is Fay, and a passion of mine is mental health. Having suffered from quite a young age with varying degrees, it's something that I think is incredibly important. And obviously, at the moment, it's very much highlighted with everything that's going on. And I just want to try and share some of my experiences and also just make it something that's more talked about and make it more open for others so that people realize they're not on their own, so that kids, especially sort of young people my kids' age, feel that they can talk about it openly, unlike we did when we were young and it just wasn't discussed.
Brilliant. And with Felicity Finds, I mean, what is that to? I mean, obviously we'll have notes, in the podcast and stuff, but what does that do? And why did you start that? I mean, obviously to enable people to talk about mental health, but why did you start it?
It's an interesting one. I actually started it quite a while ago. I had a small business that I ran myself alongside a part-time job, creating sort of accessories and things like that for kids. And just through doing that, I then started to blog alongside that, and that's where the How Felicity Finds came from.
Wow.
And I started to share a bit more on the blogging side and found I really enjoyed that actually, and enjoyed sharing the content, and it seemed to go down well. And so I thought I started to work more and more on that side of it and just really sort of share other people's stories, share my stories, share some tips and advice and great websites that, we found a bit like, when I read your book, that was fantastic. So to be able to share that with people, it's just any kind of resources and tips and help for people along the way, and that's really where Felicity Finds came from.
And why Felicity?
I always get asked this, and because then people think they've got my name wrong, and so I get called Felicity a lot, which doesn't bother me. But basically, it comes from when I was born. My mum wanted to call me Felicity, and my father, bless his soul, up there, said no, and so I was called Fay.
Wow.
And so Felicity is my little nod to my mum, who brought us up, myself and my two
Oh,
sisters, on her own,
wow.
and did a fantastic job. So it's my little nod to her to say thank you.
Oh, how nice is that? You mentioned about sort of struggling with kind of mental health. Can you kind of expand on that? Would that be all right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was bullied at school quite badly.
No.
What is known down here as junior school years, so years
Mm.
4, 5, 6. So I'd moved from a very small village and moved to a new town, East Kilbride, and you know it was just one of those things. I happened to be There was two of us that joined that year. There was myself and there was the minister's son, who clearly went out on he sort of thought, well, I'm going to get picked on anyway because I'm the minister's son, so I'm just going to be inherently naughty. So they all thought he was wonderful. Um,
Wow.
and so, yeah, it was just girls being girls. It's one of those things you look back now, I know now, having looked back, that I can see the girl that sort of was at the head of it all. She was suffering some real rubbish at home. Her parents were
Wow.
going through some hard stuff. And I think a lot of it was taken out on the kids. But, when you're young, you don't know that. And obviously, she didn't know how to deal with that. There was no help for her there at that time. So the easiest thing was to take it out on an easy target, which happened to be me at that time. So that affected me quite badly. But then luckily when we moved up to secondary school, because my sisters were quite a bit older, they'd moved to a high school that was outside of the catchment area. Due to us moving at the time, it didn't make any difference. So I ended up going to a completely different secondary school than that girl and quite a few of the girls that were part of it. So that gave me a bit of a clean break, which was
Wow.
which was a really good thing, actually. And I had a fantastic time at high school. But from then on, I always sort of suffered with very low self-esteem. I found certain situations very hard. I'm not very good at failing at things. You know, if somebody, because to me, that's me back at square one again. I'm, rubbish, and it gives everyone an opportunity to point and laugh. And so I then I started suffering sort of depression. It probably wasn't diagnosed till I was late teens. My father, as I say, my mum and dad split up when I was just weeks old. So I think always on the lookout for a father figure. I married very, very young. I was 19 when I got married the first time. That didn't work out very well. We rushed into things. It wasn't the best marriage in the world. It was abusive. There were a lot of problems. I obviously wasn't incredibly well at the time anyway. And so at that point was when I was first diagnosed with depression. And then throughout my life, I suffered from postnatal depression after having my eldest two boys. They were very close together. There was only 14 months between them, and I just found it incredibly difficult. I was in York on my own without, at that point, my mum wasn't here, so I didn't really have much support. And I just found it really difficult. Goodness knows how people have gone through, having babies in lockdown. I really don't know how they've done that. Bless them. And then, things just keep going. And eventually, sort of after another episode of quite a sort of low mood and depressive state, the doctors sent me for some therapy. I was very lucky to get that. And the therapist at the time was fantastic. It was maybe about 2-3 years ago now, and she was the one that sort of finally diagnosed and said, I really don't think it's just depression. I think you have post-traumatic stress disorder.
Wow.
And once we went through it, it was one of those kind of really awakening moments where you go, oh gosh, yeah. Because you suddenly realise that's why I felt like that, and that's why this does this to me, and that's why I have a panic attack at this point in time. And oh yes, that is a panic attack. That's what's been happening. I'm not just an emotional mess. So that was great to kind of, it's one of those moments where you do realise, there's a weight lifted in a way, because suddenly there's a reason why everything's been happening, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and you can actually do something about it, which was fab.
And it makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You can really sort of go back and look at things and see why things happened. I've always been quite lucky in that I can look back at things and be able to sort of, even by the time I was in my 20s, I was sort of able to look back at my bully and recognise then that she had issues, and she wasn't just, and I think that's the same for a lot of people like that. Generally, it's that they're having their own issues and they just don't know how to deal with those, so it's easier to take it out on others, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the sessions, well, some of the sessions that we do in schools, we literally raise the question, who's been bullied? And obviously lots of people put their hands up, and then we ask the next question, which is, and which one of you has bullied?
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because we then get into a conversation, and every single person who's put their hand up to the latter question is doing it because they don't feel good about themselves. If you were
Yeah,
in a good place, you
absolutely.
feel great, you wouldn't do it. And I know it's very easy to kind of point the finger, not that we are, but they have issues. And the thing is, if we deal with those issues, then the bullying kind of doesn't go away, but it certainly becomes lessened. So it's fascinating that you've alluded to that. So
Yeah.
what has helped you? In other words, what have you learned along the way that's kind of helped shape your life?
It's like that quote that, every storm passes. I think I've always been able to look at the bigger picture and know that actually, although whatever situation I might be in at that point in time, it will always pass. So no matter how difficult it might seem, I think the only time I ever got to a point where I didn't feel like that was when I had the postnatal depression, and I did get to the point of a suicide attempt. And I think that's when you realise that you really feel that you can't go any further. But I think apart from that, the overriding thing that's always got me through, especially when I was younger, was always knowing that it would always be okay. It was never going to stay like that forever. And just
Mm,
always having somebody. I was very lucky with my, I could always talk to my mum, could always talk to
mm,
friends, but my mum especially was always there. I could tell her absolutely anything. She would never judge. She would never, you know,
mm.
decide upon anything. She would just sit and listen. She was great. She was one of those, she would never just agree with me and tell me I was always right. She would, if she didn't feel I was right or that I was looking at something incorrectly or I'd done something wrong, she would tell me. But where I was right, or was feeling whatever for whatever reason, she would always be the one to fight my corner and back me up. And I think
Wow.
that's a great thing for kids to have.
Because sometimes, I mean, when children are from troubled backgrounds, maybe they don't have an active parent in their life, but if they have got somebody who's a mentor or coach, maybe it's a teacher or maybe just somebody that's close that has
Yeah,
got their back and
absolutely.
does stick up for them. That's really important, isn't it, to make those connections?
I think as a child, I think, and as a young adult, I think that's absolutely invaluable to have somebody that, no matter what, you can go
Mm.
to. I don't think we place enough importance on that.
Totally and utterly agree, and I think it for us. I mean, we're trying to set up peer-to-peer mentoring and coaching, within the Me program and stuff and whatever to help people, so that at least they've got somebody that they can kind of turn to, that is a voice of reason and a voice of support, as opposed to condemnation and all that kind of stuff. So what and who has helped you along the way? I mean, you mentioned your mum. I mean, has anything else helped along the way? Any other people?
I think I've been very lucky. I've met some great people. My family, especially, just as a whole, I've got a very
Mm,
small, direct family. There's just me, my two sisters, my mum, and her brother. But as a result of that, while I was young, we had a very extended, non-blood related family, which was, very unusual. It just meant that a lot of the people that I met through that were, some exceptional people there. So I have aunts
mm,
and uncles, who I just, I would wish that everybody would have had them when they were growing up. They were just amazing. I had some
mm.
amazing experiences, and again, just some of the conversations and the advice that they were able to sort of give to me from experiences that they had through their life. I mean, that for me has been a massive part of it, and some great teachers when I was at high school as well.
They make a
I
huge
think
difference.
sometimes teachers don't always realise the importance that they play outside of just, a sort of educational setting.
Yeah, it's interesting. They say that a teacher is actually number two after a parent in terms of a significant influence in a young person's life, and I really truly do believe that. Um, so, what obstacles do you think has sort of hindered and helped you in a way?
I mean, I think a big one for me was always confidence. So it stopped me
Mm,
doing an awful lot of things. I mean, you've seen that firsthand.
yeah.
Um, so, it even now, 45 years of age, it's still incredibly difficult for me to overcome some of those
Mm,
things that have been around since those junior years at school, which is a long, long time. And I think if we just have that ability to deal with things a little bit better at the time, then, they will never, ever stop you for the rest of your life, because they really have stopped me doing certain things. Although I am a great
mm,
believer in everything happening for a reason. So,
mm,
and one of the funny things I find is I'm not very good at spelling. I'm not very good at grammar. I always put it down to when it was those years that I was being bullied and that I probably didn't pay attention. But actually now my youngest son has been found to be severely dyslexic.
wow.
Um, and having gone through that process with him, they think it's probably that I'm dyslexic as well. Um, but I absolutely love to write, and that's come
It's
through with
amazing.
Felicity Finds. I really do love to write. So I find it difficult. It's not the
Mm,
easiest thing that comes to me, especially with the spelling and the grammar. But that's really helped me to be able to just write down how I'm feeling, how my thoughts are. I mean, it's especially even just in lockdown there, that was the one thing that got me through, was just being able to write down how I was feeling every day, and, you know, how it was affecting us, how it was affecting the kids. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. And I just have to mention to listeners that we've tried several times, haven't we, to do this? And
Yes.
for whatever reason, dentists and other bits and pieces have kind of got in the way. But many times that you have been anxious to do it, and
Yeah.
and not being able to do it. And the reason why I think this is remarkable is that you are doing this, and you sound so wonderfully at ease. And I can imagine that inside there's quite a lot of turmoil, but what you're saying to people is gold dust. And that's why getting over that anxiety, even if it's just for half an hour or so, is so important to people. It's wonderful. I mean, it really
Yeah,
is.
absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that I'll take as well from the sort of last year, the last 6 months. It's really made me feel that actually I have to push myself. And it might take me, 10 times as long as somebody else, and somebody else might take 10 times longer than I will.
Mm,
Because the anxiety can be so different in everyone. And I think it
mm,
just needs somebody to, you've been absolutely fantastic. I would imagine there'd be other people out there who just go, oh, for goodness sake, this is just ridiculous. But you were so understanding, and it was even the fact that I could be honest with you and tell you that that's why I was having issues.
mm, mm,
And you've been so patient, and I think, yeah, for me, a big part now is to actually do it, because now that I'm doing it, I'm sat here talking to you. It's absolutely fine. I keep thinking one of the
You're
kids is going to
amazing.
come in and they're going
It
to
doesn't
start
matter if they
saying things.
do.
But so it's that initial hurdle. It is just getting over that initial hurdle, and I think hearing that other people go through that, and that actually if they can
Mm.
do it, then if I can do it, anyone can do it. So,
So lovely. So I'm going to ask you, so what one word would you use to describe yourself?
oh goodness, um, I would probably say hopeful.
Lovely. Beautiful word.
Hopeful, yeah.
And what advice would you, if you could go back to your primary years or back to your younger self, what advice would you give Faye when she was younger?
I think I would probably just tell myself not to take everything to heart. I think that was something that was very much drummed into me as a child, and I therefore then drummed into myself, and I take things far too personally. So I would probably have just taken myself to one side and said, look, do not take it personally. Try and think about it from everyone's point of view. Um, you know, it really isn't personal to you. And if I think if I could have done that, I probably would have saved myself an awful lot of tears and sleepless nights and, trauma along the way.
But it's so hard, isn't it, when you are younger, because that's the only world you know. And I mean,
Absolutely. And it's
hindsight.
everything to you. And just the smallest
Mm,
thing is,
mm,
and it's not until you're older that you are able to sort of look back and go,
mm,
actually, that wasn't the biggest thing in the world. But I think that's another thing that people need to realize when they're trying to talk to younger people and help younger people, is to realize and not belittle how they feel at that point in time,
brilliant.
because that really
Brilliant.
is how important that is to them, that you can't make it
Brilliant.
any less, because that's what it is to them, and you have to accept their feelings and
Mm.
validate them, and realize that that really is what's so important to them, and just think of how you can help them and make them work through that. But yeah, I think for me it would have been that. Yeah.
That's beautiful, because I think I there's so often, I've even caught myself, this is many years ago, saying to a daughter or son or whatever, don't be silly, and now I think, God, that's just so hurtful, those two words or those three words, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't dare say that now. So when Freddie or B or whatever says they feel a certain way, I literally just sit there and I just listen and I go, and let's just explore that, and not in a kind of, oh, let's be a psychiatrist or a counselor, but just to listen to those feelings and to
And that's what I
validate
was
them.
going to say. I think so much of it is just that they want somebody to listen.
Yeah.
They don't want they probably understand that it can't all be solved in a second flat as well. They just want somebody actually to listen to them and accept that that's how they're feeling. As you say,
Brilliant.
not to be told that they're being silly
No,
or
no.
stop making such a big deal of it, because to them it really is the biggest thing that's happening to them, and it is really
Mm,
important to them. So we as adults need to, as you say, sit down and just listen.
mm. And it's so funny, isn't it? How many times, do people say, "Oh, when you get older, you won't feel this way," and when you're grown up, and this, that, and the other. And I just want to say to people, it's totally irrelevant. They cannot be in the future. They are only in the now. And children are so brilliant, aren't they, at being in the now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's easy for us to look back, but you can't look forward, can you?
No, you really can't. So, what advice would you like to give to others at whatever age?
I think it is that thing that always sort of helped me get through, to know that tomorrow is another day. I take each day as it comes. I find that really helps me. I'm a big worrier. I overthink everything. So I
Mm,
tend to try not to overload my life with doing things. I try and lead
brilliant.
as simple a life as possible, because otherwise it's too much. So for me, it's about taking each day as it comes, leading as simple a life as possible, and just taking stock every now and again and seeing what's really important to you and focusing on that, and never mind about anything else, because everything else will still go on behind the scenes. It'll still be there, so it's not worth the worry about it if it's not important to
Right.
you.
That's brilliant, isn't it? And it's so funny when you said sort of keep it simple, and it really is, isn't it? I mean, I've, like you, suffered hugely from anxiety, and it was so funny when I thought of all of the things that made me anxious. It was just almost like a maelstrom of stuff. I just couldn't cope.
Yeah,
And the way that, like you, I had to strip it all away, and just literally one foot in front of the other was the only thing that I could manage. I mean, I couldn't even be around my children because I just couldn't cope. I couldn't cope
yeah,
with anything being out of kilter or not being in control. And that was the thing that I needed
yeah,
to let go of, but I couldn't.
yeah. I think the control thing is a difficult one, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah.
Because I think a massive part of anxiety is the need to control,
Yeah.
because the assumption is that if you can't control it, then you've got to be anxious about it, because what might happen.
Mm,
And so,
mm.
yeah, to be able to walk away from that and give that up on certain aspects is an incredibly difficult thing to do.
Oh, it's
So,
hugely hard.
yeah,
And is there any other advice you'd like to give to? I love this, by the way. People are listening. This is the first time you and I have ever spoken. I mean, we've emailed and stuff and whatever, and I
yeah.
just knew when we were in contact. I just knew this would be magic. It really is. So,
Yeah,
any
I
other
must
advice
admit,
that you would give?
it's one of those things, isn't it? I think I knew from the minute we sort of made
Mm, mm,
contact through email that, yeah,
mm,
there was something, there was a connection there, wasn't there?
mm.
There was a story to be made.
To unfold, definitely. So, any other advice?
Um, no, I think that's pretty much. I mean, I suppose the biggest one is, if you are anxious, if you are not feeling great, and I think you always know deep down. So I think you have to listen to your gut,
Mm,
and just talk to somebody. You have to
brilliant.
talk to somebody. And if that person that you first approach doesn't listen, tries to tell you how to solve it, and it doesn't feel right,
Mm,
then talk to somebody else until you find that person. You'll know the right person who's got that connection with you, who's willing to just sit and listen and realize how important whatever it is that you're going through is to you, and help you on that journey however they can.
that's really lovely. And what legacy would you like to leave behind? Don't want to be morbid, but we're gonna we're
Oh,
gonna depart at some point.
we all are, yep. I suppose the main one for me is to make sure that my three boys are the best that they can be in themselves. And if I can pan that out and do that for anyone else, whether that's just being there for people, or whether it's going and sharing my story more or working through things, you know, it for me, it really is. That would be the one thing I'd like to be able to do, is to walk away knowing that I helped others with their journey.
It's beautiful. And I'm just going to jump back to the bullying thing. If there is a young boy or a young girl, or whatever age, being bullied, what advice would you give them?
Tell somebody.
Brilliant.
That's the main thing for me is do not take that journey on alone. It's too much for someone to take on their own, whether it's bullying at school, whether it's bullying in the workplace, and the problem is nowadays you can't escape it. I could escape it when I got home, but kids don't now. And so you have to tell somebody, and hard as it is to try and think about the person who's bullying you, and that external reasons to why they might be doing that, to give some understanding, and that's a really hard one to do, to be fair. But it does just sometimes give you that ability to look at it in a different light. But I think the biggest advice I would give is to not take that journey on alone, and please go and talk to somebody and tell somebody.
Brilliant. Fay, amazing. Seriously, thank you so much. Beautiful, beautiful talking to you. And that advice, about bullying, you really are not alone. And do reach out. I mean, we'll put in the details of your website and Felicity Finds and whatever. But reach out either to the Me program or to your good self. I mean, we're here.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can help in some way. Thank you so much for your time. Lovely to finally meet you vocally.
Yes, you too, Sid.
And thank you very much. Lovely to meet you.